Yes, so here at Empire Wrestling in Sunderland, joined by your current Empire Wrestling heavyweight champion, it is Nathan Cruz. You alright, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. I just come out of that main event, a bit of a rough crowd tonight, to be honest, but rough venue, rough part of Sunderland.
Yeah. So you've been wrestling for nearly 13 years now, is that right?
Yes, I officially made my debut on August 26th, 2006. Started training the March of that year, so yeah, I'm closing 13 years in the job now.
So like for someone like myself, an outside looking in, I've noticed a big change in the British wrestling scene. I mean, would you say from a wrestler who's been here and done it, would you agree with that? Has there been a big change for you as well? Or?
Oh yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. You know, like, I mean, even for Empire tonight, this is a very rare occasion. I've seen them in a working men's club. They're usually in this big venue with like a huge setup, and that's the main thing that I've noticed since I started. A lot of the venues were like this, and you certainly wouldn't have this many people in. You have about, you know, if we had 40, 50 people in back in like 07, we'd be like, oh, decent house tonight. And like, you know, but the level of production value that seems to have got stepped up, and then obviously the talent that stepped up. I think what happened was, and I hate to say this because I was taught a lot by all those guys from the 90s, but back then I don't think many of them saw the business opportunity in having a wrestling school, or either that the job just wasn't as open as it is now. Like right now, the curtain couldn't be pulled any further back, and so I think it was more protected then. So it was a lot harder to get in, and a lot harder. I knew it was very difficult for me to try and find a wrestling school when I was trying to search for a training school. But like, yeah, I think what happened is we didn't have the right people guiding us. I know my start was terrible. I was trained by an absolute nobody who taught me a lot of the wrong things. I got by on like natural ability or charisma or whatever, and thankfully was taught by the right people. Eventually they took me into the wing, people like Ligero and Rampage Brown. But before then, like, yeah, we didn't really have those people around to help us, and like I think that's the big thing that's changed. Like Rampage Brown, for example, has a school in this area in the northeast. He's a great person to go to learn from. You have Dean Allmark running his training school, Zach Gibson, James Drake. I run a wrestling school in Hull, and I'm also teaching in a place called Batley as well, just outside of Bradford. So, you know, there's great places to learn now around the country. We have Dragon Pro down in Wales, which is Mike Hitchman. You have Hustle and Knuckle Locks in London, which is Daryl Allen taking Knuckle Locks and Sid Scala taking Hustle. So there's so many good places to learn from. So the talent that was going to come through was always going to improve, and that's really what's happened. Everybody just wanted it. Every aspect of the job is picked up, and like where we are now, I mean, it's mind blowing. It really is.
So like if anyone wants to be a wrestler, I guess they've got plenty places to look and train now.
Yeah, but you know what, unfortunately you've still got plenty of bad places as well kicking around. And like I always say, like William Regal said this, he put out a tweet, is like, look at your trainer's pedigree. And I think that's the best advice I can say to anybody who's trying to get into pro wrestling is look at who's training you. Do you know what I mean? Where have they been? What have they done? Look at their career. Have they been able to make this a full-time career? Have they had experience overseas? Have they worked a full-time schedule? Actually made a full-time living out of this? Do you know what I mean? Not just I do it on weekends and on the weekday I'm in a post office or whatever. Like they've actually made a full-time career out of this, and they've got a good reputation. I think that's one of the best things to look out for when you're looking to find a training school.
What made you? Which wrestler did you watch and made you realise I want to do this? I want to be a wrestler.
I mean, there was multiple, but there was a turning. I mean, I literally can't remember a time that I didn't watch it. My dad watched it, so naturally, like I just watched it as a kid, and I was always a fan. And then the turning point for me. There was one match in particular. I was 10 years old. WrestleMania 17, Undertaker Triple H, and I remember like that entire match I was invested in because I was a huge Undertaker fan, and but like him seeing that in his hometown crowd, and I specifically remember there's the end of that match and he's draped over the rope and he's got the blood just coming down like his forehead, and it pans out to 67,000 of his hometown crowd going absolutely mental for him, and I just remember looking at him thinking, that's incredible. And it wasn't so much just like about the match, like or anything. Like, it's that emotion and that story that they told, and that they captivated the crowd with that. And like, you know, so many people in that, like I say, over 67,000 people don't know Mark Calloway the man, but they're in love with him for that moment, and that's what those two guys created in that ring. And I think that's so spectacular, and that was it. That was the turning point where it was like, this is what I have to do in my life. I was 10 years old, and I think, like, obviously most people, when you're that young and you tell your parents or teachers you're going to be a pro wrestler, they kind of laugh it off. But when this continued into secondary school, to the point I was like, 15 when I started training, it was like, oh, I guess this is something he's going to actually try and pursue,
If you're trying to explain who Nathan Cruz is to someone who's not a wrestling fan or hasn't watched wrestling before, how do you describe Nathan Cruz in the ring? How do you describe the character Nathan Cruz, perhaps?
I mean, he's evolved, and over the years, you know what I mean. It started out because I started out so young. At the time, I was also doing TV extra work, so he was fame had gone to his head. He was like a bratty teen celebrity. I was only like 18 at the time, and then that kind of evolved to this prima donna character, where he was kind of just like, in love with himself. And then that evolved to when I did the storyline with Alex Shane, like the show stealer, because I started getting a reputation around the scene of somebody who could, for so young, I could do a good main event. I think I was only 20 at the time. And then where I am now, I'm 28, and like I said, I've been around a while, and like it's just one of them things. Like you'll notice today, I arrive in a suit, and I've always have done. Drew McDonald instilled that in me. Because when before I turned full time, I arrived to a show and I still had my work gear on, and he was like, "Oh, I like that. Like you look like somebody," and he said, "I think that's how the lads should show up to a show, lads and lasses." And I was like, it always stuck with me. And he said, "You look like a professional," and that started to like become a thing everywhere. Is that, oh, Nathan's like the constant professional. He always does what's asked of him, and then that's what kind of became. Like, I kind of just took that from real life and was like, well, I'm going to be the constant professional. I'll use that now as like, that's my new heel persona now. That's like the guy, I'm an elitist. I'm above you because I can afford to dress like this because I've done so well with my life. And, at 20, like I say, we'll go back to then when I was able to pretend this a full-time career. I'd done more than most people had done by their mid-30s, and he's that elitist character that's always gone above him, always gone above other people, and he looks down on others. He's an absolute smug prick.
Yeah, is there anyone who's realistically you could face that you haven't yet that you really want to get in the ring with?
Oh God, there's an endless list. I think off the top of my head, there's people that I never got to really tie up with who have signed to NXT You Care. These guys across the seas that like, for example, Zack Sabre Jr. I've never done anything with Zack ever. Our paths crossed in like tag team matches very early on in my all-star wrestling career, but never in a singles contest. And same with Alistair Black. Like we did a few tag team things in progress, and I remember we both came back and there was chemistry there. Do you know what I mean? We really enjoyed what we did, and we was always hoping that it'd eventually lead to a singles match, and it never happened. It's just one of them things. Like hopefully one day it might happen, but there's an endless list I could name through. Like I could go on forever.
This small thing called NXT You Care that's going on at the moment. Could we see Nathan Cruz appear on there in the near future?
You know what, it's pro wrestling, never say never. I was originally, quite a lot of people know this story now, it was quite common. I was supposed to be part of the original tournament, but I got taken out due to a medical failure. I had an undiscovered blood pressure issue. It was heartbreaking at the time. Couldn't really make sense of it in my head that I'd worked at that point 10 years to get to that point, and I'd done NXT at Full Sail beforehand. Everything was looking well for me, and then that happened, and it was kind of a setback, a bit of a bump in the road. And last year was a rough year, but then everything happens for a reason. I got my, if it weren't for that, I wouldn't have found out I had this blood pressure issue, which could have been life-threatening. And my dad had a stroke, so potentially that could have gone on to me. So like for me to now have that like under control, like medication and stuff, and then and to be able to then get the opportunity to World of Sport, which was, that was historical, like to have that back on ITV, and it really took the sting out of it. Like I say, it's pro wrestling, never say never, and if the opportunity came about, I'd certainly listen to it, but I'm very, very happy with where I am right now.
That's good. So finally though, how can we keep up with you on all your social media?
Both on Instagram and Twitter, it's at Nathan_Cruz 9090. My Facebook's private, you won't find me on Facebook, but I do have a fan page on Facebook that you can follow on there. But yeah, Instagram and Twitter is like my two main forms of social media.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Nathan, for your time.